Chapter 6. Jesus Had Long Hair. My brother and I both went to Catholic grammar school in Brooklyn, run by nuns. I remember being called into the office almost every month during the first and second grade. Once I got to the office, the principal, who was a nun named Sister Marie would ask me, "Do you know why you were called to the office, Joseph?" "No, I have no idea," I would reply. She would then explain to me that my parents didn't pay the tuition and that soon I wouldn't be allowed to go to class or to see my friends ever again if they didn't pay immediately. I'm not sure that I ever really understood exactly what she meant. I don't think I grasped the concept of money or even knew what tuition was. Looking back, I realized that was a horrible thing to do to a little 7-year-old kid. She was basically trying to terrify me, so I would go home crying and tell my parents to pay the tuition, or I would be kicked out of school and never see my friends again. But it never worked. Even at that age, I knew when someone was trying to manipulate me. This same scenario repeated itself over the next few years, and this is exactly what started my hatred and horrible relationship with the only person I've ever truly hated in my life, Sister Marie. 6th grade became one of the best years of my life. Even though there were 2 higher grades at our school, we were the kings of the school now. Something came over all of us after that. Our teacher at the time, Mr. Green, was kind of a weird old man who we used to abuse. Don't get me wrong, we weren't necessarily bad kids, but we knew how to push the limits. Mr. Green didn't last long because of our behavior. Rumor has it he had a heart attack, but we never knew for sure. After Mr. Green's supposed heart attack, we went through about 12 or 13 substitute teachers who would all quit after the first day because of us. We loved it. After all of the substitute teachers quit, the school finally hired a permanent replacement, a young 22-year-old right out of college. Her name was Miss Whalen. Van Halen's Hot for Teacher video was still pretty popular at this point, and we would always joke around with, "What if we got a hot teacher like in the video?" Well, it happened. After Miss Whalen got there, all the boys were pretty well behaved to stay on her good side. We even volunteered to stay after class sometimes to help her clean the blackboard. An added bonus for being such good boys was that Miss Whalen would always drive us home in her 1968 red Mustang. She didn't know what she was getting herself into. Even though I was behaving better in the classroom, my rivalry with my principal, Sister Marie, was just heating up. I already hated her because of the manipulation game she pulled about my tuition being late. Now, because of my music, I was growing my hair long, and that was a big no-no in Catholic school. In fact, students weren't allowed to have the back of our hair even touch our collar. What a ridiculous rule. It's not like I was dirty or my hair was sloppy. It was just starting to get a little long. Every time Sister Marie spotted me, she would pull me into her office and scream that I needed a haircut. She would try to demean me by saying, "You look like a girl," or "You look ridiculous." Can you believe that? This from someone who was supposed to be guiding us in our religious beliefs. She was trying to humiliate me because I looked different than what she liked. My hatred grew to the point that now, out of spite, I refused to cut my hair. So eventually she just suspended me. Yes, you heard right. She would keep a 12-year-old out of class because his hair was too long. I didn't care. I looked at a day of suspension as a day off from school. Even though I was suspended often, it never hurt my grades because I was smart and never needed to study or do homework. While I was far from a straight-A student, I didn't even have to try to pass tests. Unfortunately, I also found school rather useless because I knew I was going to be a drummer and/or a wrestler. This attitude made me even more rebellious. It was as if I felt I knew more than my teachers, and I was 100% sure that I knew more than my jerk of a principal, Sister Marie. The first time I was suspended because of my hair, Sister Marie sent a long note home outlining the school rules and why she thought my hair looked ridiculous. She also wrote that I needed to have it cut to school regulations in order to return to school the next day. I was nervous bringing the note home to my mom. I knew that being suspended was not something she would take lightly. I never hid anything from my mom. She, along with my dog Yukon, were my absolute best friends. Maybe my brother Dan a close third. I was going to be honest and tell her what happened. When I presented my mom with the note from Sister Marie, I expected the worst. I assumed she would be angry and insist that I cut my hair because it was the school rule. She read the note as I stood by anxiously awaiting her verdict. Once finished, she looked at me and said, "You tell that Sister Marie Jesus had long hair. Why can't you?" I was overcome with joy that my mom was on my side and saw how ridiculous the suspension was. In my heart, I knew she believed in me and my drums and wasn't going to side with some repulsive nun over her son and his dreams. She proved, once again, why she was the greatest mom in the world. I returned to school the next day with my hair exactly as it was and proceeded to march into Sister Marie's office. Upon seeing me, her face turned red as fire, and I swear there was smoke coming out of her ears. She couldn't believe that I returned without a haircut. She barked, "Why is your hair not cut like I demanded?" In a very calm voice, I answered, "Jesus had his hair long. Why can't I?" This sent Sister Marie into a frenzy like I've never seen before. She couldn't believe that I'd not only disobeyed her, but that I had a smart answer for her. An answer she probably wasn't ready for. My ongoing war with Sister Marie reached an all-time high. I was suspended 5 times during the 8th grade, and all because of my hair. It got to the point where I didn't even want to walk into school and pass her office because I knew I would get screamed at. She was really trying to pull some sort of weird power trip on me, but I wasn't budging. As long as I had my mom's support, there was no way I was giving in to this power-hungry piece of garbage. It may sound sacrilegious to call a nun a piece of garbage, but after all she had done to me, that's exactly what she was. She actually called a meeting with the other teachers to try to get me expelled from school one time. She called me a ringleader and claimed that all my friends, which she called the bad kids or the troublemakers, followed what I said. Getting rid of me would be for the good of the school. I knew this was her power trip again because I wouldn't obey her like everyone else did. She had repeatedly told me to cut my hair, and I had repeatedly refused. This was her final attempt at dealing with me. My mom, along with all of my friends' moms, went up to school to fight for me and tell Sister Marie that I should not be expelled. Some of them even threatened to take their kids out of school if I was expelled. I think that was the ultimatum that saved me. As soon as it might hurt her and her school financially, she backed down and reluctantly let me stay. Of course, she knew that in a few months I'd be gone for good anyway. I had won this small battle, but the war was far from over. Still, more battles loomed ahead. 2 weeks before our 8th grade final exams began, Sister Marie grabbed me offline and told me that if I didn't get a haircut, I would be taking all my final exams in her office. So of course, on the first day of final exams, I showed up with my hair the same way it had always been. Actually, through the school year, it was getting longer and longer. Sister Marie informed me that I was to report to her office every morning during finals. I proceeded to take my tests in her office every day. Luckily for me, earlier in that week, I found my old KISS book from when I went to see them at Madison Square Garden when I was 5 years old. I always finished my tests pretty quickly, and now I had something besides Sister Marie's ugly face to look at for the rest of the day. This infuriated her even more. 1, because she saw that the tests were relatively easy for me, and 2, because she saw me reading a KISS book after I was done. KISS represented everything I loved and everything we fought over. It was the perfect way to dig at her without having to say a word. After taking all my finals in Sister Marie's office, I was finally allowed to return to class for the final 2 weeks of school. The last few years with my friends in grammar school were some of the best times of my life. We became more than friends. We became brothers. We enjoyed those last 2 weeks of school and tried to make them last a lifetime. We all knew that soon we would all be going to different schools, and while we'd still see each other, it would never be like it is now. The whole week before graduation, Sister Marie threatened me by saying, "You will not graduate unless you cut that hair." She was relentless up to the last second. I, of course, completely ignored the threat and enjoyed the last few weeks with my friends. She wasn't going to ruin the last moments I had with my buddies. On graduation day, my mom gave me a gold drum necklace with the skin made of pearl. It was beautiful and I loved it. I knew what it must have taken for her to save up for it, so it meant the world to me and I wore it with pride. We learned a few weeks earlier during graduation practice that we would be marching down the aisle to the song Pomp and Circumstance. I now know that most graduations play this song, but back in 1988, I only knew it as one thing: the Macho Man Randy Savage's theme song. All of my friends dared me to do the whole Macho Man routine as I walked down the aisle, and I couldn't disappoint them. So, as Pomp and Circumstance blasted over the church loudspeakers, I began the Macho Man walk as if headed to the ring to fight my opponent at WrestleMania. In a way, I actually was. At the end of that long walk waited my arch nemesis, Sister Marie. Even though I was walking the aisle during the actual ceremony, I still hadn't technically graduated yet, not until she handed me that diploma. I saw her staring at me with her beady eyes. She was dressed in her usual attire, a dark gray suit with dirty black sneakers. Her short gray hair was spiked and I could smell her stench from a mile away. I knew what awaited me, so I took my time and I really played to the crowd. I mostly did it to get one more laugh with my friends, and laugh they did. They couldn't believe I had the balls to actually do the Macho Man ring entrance in church during graduation. Ever since I was little, I always had the balls to do crazy stuff like that. Or maybe it was more like I liked the attention. So after my graduation antics, I returned to the back of the church where Sister Marie grabbed me one last time and pulled me in close. I was nose to nose with the beast. I could smell her disgusting cigar breath. What the hell kind of nuns smoke cigars anyway? We held our ground for a few moments, then she finally spoke. "I guess you won, Mr. Casada." Still nose to nose, I smiled and said, "Yes, I guess I did." I pulled away from her, grabbed my diploma out of her hands, and continued through the church doors, holding up my diploma like it was the WWF Championship belt. Game, set, match. Joey wins. Ooh, yeah!